Morning, everybody. Welcome to my LinkedIn Live channel, the Power of Connection channel, for my daily broadcast, 8:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, every Monday to Friday. My name is Bobby Umar, and I'm excited to share thoughts with you today. And if you are joining us, by all means, comment below. Let us know where you're from and where you're actually, watching this live stream. And also be sure to ask questions and engage with the other people in the feed and see if you can connect with them. If you like what you're hearing, by all means, like and love the comments there. You can also tag people you think should be part of the conversation, and if you can also share this on your feed, feel free to do that. Tag me. I'm happy to support you as well. So the topic today is what to do when your work situation conflicts with your values or principles. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because something happened to me recently where it came into play. And I think that if I was younger, I probably wouldn't have been able to say, no, I'm not going to do this, versus now that I'm older and more mature and able to handle it. Although there are, situations where sometimes you can't. So that's really what the topic is today. And so, have you ever had a situation where you've struggled with that alignment? And I'll give you a quick short story of something that happened a long time ago, which was when I first started my post-engineering career after my MBA in brand marketing. I was working for Kraft. And many people don't know this, but Kraft actually was owned by Philip Morris, which then became Altria, but ultimately it was a cigarette company. And I remember someone coming up to me, and I was working in the marketing department. It was my first job post MBA, so I was very excited to get a job, and I'd been looking for a job for a few months, and so I was like, okay, I better roll with this thing. But what was interesting is that someone pointed out, hey, do you know that you're working for a cigarette company? How do you feel about that? I mean, do you like cigarettes? I'm like, no, I don't like cigarettes at all. I think it's an unhealthy habit. And like, what do you think about tobacco companies? I'm like, oh man, like, yeah, that sucks. And then the question goes, so why are you working there? And wow, I was like, I was stonewalled with that question to try to figure, well, yeah, why am I working here? And one of the things that I had to figure out is align myself to, like, what exactly, how does that work with my values? Are my values aligned with Kraft and what they were doing in terms of marketing, or it was reflective of the large conglomerate that owned them? And how do I resolve the situations in my life in terms of trying to, my wife and I were recently married, we're trying to make some money, and it's my first job post MBA. Like, how do I deal with this? And so it brought up a lot of questions. And at the time, I'll be honest, like, I didn't think much of it. And also, now I reflect back, I mean, it would have been very difficult for me to leave right away. Although, I probably could have started looking for another job and whatnot. Although I did not. I had to stay there for 3.5 years. But it's something that certainly was on my mind about, how does that align when there's situations there. Similarly, you may have a situation where you have a boss or a work colleague that's working in an unethical way or an unhealthy way. And then how do you stand up for the ethics? Do you stand up for the healthy living aspect? And these are things that we have to decide sometimes on a daily basis in our workplace. Working with an unethical boss can be extremely exhausting. I know friends who struggle with that. That's a part of toxicity that can be extremely difficult for many people, and my heart goes out to them because I know how challenging that could be. I've had a few bosses that I think bordered on certainly different values than mine. I remember back in my engineering days, there was a boss who certainly was a lot different than me. But it definitely was hard, and all those people. So let me say good morning now, because now they got the LinkedIn thing. So there's Tommy, hey Vinay, there's wow, Kira Day is here. The amazing Kira Day, that's amazing. Abdul's here, glad from Saudi Arabia. Wow, Sonia's here. Tommy, Kira, Carrie, Brock, Ravi from Switzerland. Again, if you're joining in, comment below, let me know where you're from. Share some questions, engage in the topic, share your stories of dealing with values or moral conflict. I like this one that Carrie says, moral injuries are real and impact our levels of stress, disengagement, and trust. Yeah, that's really, really deep. That's awesome. I really appreciate that. And right away, there's already a question. How do you handle working with a toxic boss? Well, that's a whole other topic. But the short answer to that one is one of the things you do is you need to get alignment around people around you to make sure you have allies that are going to support you in what you're doing. Number two, you have to look at the values of the company and the mission of the company and the mission of the values and mission of the team, to see kind of how they align. And then the third thing is, if there's an HR system in place, you have to go and leverage that as best you can and document things. The problem, though, it's very, very exhausting. And if a boss is high up and they have a lot of clout, then most people, from what I've seen, get squeezed out, which is kind of unfortunate. Hey, Laura, Harley here. That's good to see you. That's an unfortunate thing, but there are things you can do to try to navigate that. And ultimately, like, I would personally get, I would talk to the boss's boss. I would talk to HR and call out the actions and actually have them all document and say, this needs to stop, and call it out. And your boss might react in a really, really bad way, but I think that you have to stand up for yourself. You have to, focus on your health, your well-being, your stress levels, your movement and growth in the organization, because that toxic workplace is I've seen it before, time and time again. It really hurts, and it kills people in terms of their motivation and it adds to their fear and their doubts and all this kind of stuff. And I don't think it's worth it. So I thought I'd actually, and again, I thought I'd get into another story which just happened recently. So even though, like, my main thing, as you all know, is I'm a professional speaker, and I also do speaking coaching and consulting around personal branding and thought leadership and speaking as well. So that's one, and also career and entrepreneurship transition and business ramp up. But that's my main thing. So speaking and coaching, consulting, that's fine. But also on the side, I started doing a little bit of acting, and so my kids are doing acting, and so I said, well, let's all do it together. And Kira's saying, no boss are worth moral conflict. I agree, Kira, but we have to keep in mind that there are people in situations that are very difficult to get out of right away. So how do we help them manage that situation in terms of dealing with that conflict before they can start to change the situation? So some people need time. Some people have the luxury to quit right away, which, all power to you. Great if you can do it. Some people cannot do that. So we have to be mindful of that. But yeah, I totally agree. It's not long term, not worth it. It's not worth the moral conflict. So going back to the acting thing, so I'm acting and my kids are acting. We're doing auditions, and I had a couple. I already filmed like four spots. My kids have done one commercial with me, which is kind of fun. So it's been a fun little family project that we've had. But the other day I got a invitation. I get notices for my and again, if you like what you're seeing, like, comment, click the buttons. It's all good. Like, I really appreciate all the engagement on the feed. So recently I got an invitation to do an audition, right? But it said very clearly it's a political ad, and so if you're not comfortable with that, let us know or whatever. So I wrote back. I said, well, you know what? For the most part, I'm comfortable with just about any party except one. Can you tell me if it's the one that I'm thinking that it could be? If it's any other ones, and I'm not really aligned with any party, but like. There are, and this is Canada, by the way, in case you don't. Canada has 4 main parties, although there are other fringe parties as well. But I just said, the other ones, I'm fine with being in a commercial about them, because they, even though they all have different philosophies, there's certain things that align with who I am. Like, one's more about climate change, another one's more about diversity, another one's about certain social justice and things like that. And hey, Susan. And so, I emailed that back, and then they emailed back saying, okay, well, actually, it's the one. It's the other one that I don't align with. And, one of the things that was interesting is that the ad was about creating an ad that would demonstrate, hey, our party is about diversity. And so they had all these different diverse people. And so for me, my feeling was that type of party, which I'm not going to name here, but people can certainly take guesses, certainly it has a bad reputation when it comes to diversity and inclusion, and some, not all, but there's a few people in that part of that organization and leadership that have not been able to be very supportive of inclusion of people of color, LGBTQ, and things like that. And so for me to not only do an ad that supports a false narrative around something that, and at the same time that'll completely misaligns my values, to me was a non-starter. And secondly, I mean, if people see that ad, on television, then how's that going to affect my brand as a leader, as a dad, as a worker, in terms of what it supports and what it represents? So, even though it could have been a good opportunity, even though it could have paid, I said no. I said I'm not going to do it, and that's fine. I mean, like now. Now, I've done that, and that's the reason why I'm bringing this up, because sometimes, you have to say no, and you have to look at your values, you have to look at your principles to see what aligns. Now, that said, let me be very clear about the fact that I have a certain amount of privilege, which is, I make most of my money for a living as a speaker. This is a side project, and yeah, there's some money there, but it's not, do or die. And other people, you know, uh, it made me think, what if you're a poor starving actor that's trying to get a gig, and this comes up and it completely misaligns with you? Do you do it? And I think I would forgive someone for doing that if they had greater need. Like that makes sense to me. Like, for me, I had the luxury and privilege to not have to worry about that kind of stuff. So, I'm glad I had that opportunity to say no to it. But it also, brought together a really good opportunity to have a discussion about, what happens when you have these situations at work. I mean, has anyone out there had situations at work where you felt there was a, moral, ethical, values conflict with the organization, or with a boss or a colleague, or even something that your company has done? I mean, I know there's some companies out there that have accounting ethical issues, or let's say you're working for a company that let's say you're really all about climate change, and now you're working for an oil gas company. How do you process that? How do you manage that? At the end of the day, we also have to, have other things to take care of. We take care of our families, we take care of our health, we take care of our, we have to earn money, and so sometimes there's a bit of a conflict. But if it is long term, or you think that there's a greater impact that doesn't look good, you have to think about those things in terms of, what do you want your legacy to be, right? So you want to say, well, I spent 50 years working for that oil and gas company that spilled millions of buckets of barrels of oil in that ocean, never cleaned it up, and cost billions of dollars to clean it up, and you're like, wow, okay, that's my legacy, or at least it's aligned with my legacy, right? You're aligned with that type of thing. And again, there's a difference between trying to figure out how to handle it long term. I mean, in short term, you can probably deal with it for a little bit and you do your best to try to accept the situation, or change the situation, or exit the situation, and try to look for another job. But long term, I think most of us have to reflect on those values and figure that out. And then here's where the other part gets really difficult. Most of us will create a narrative that makes us feel comfortable or okay with whatever it is. We do this all the time. It's a very common, confirmation bias is a very common thing we do in all aspects of our lives: business, career, love and relationships, politics. We will create this narrative where we say it's okay that, this is happening to me, or this person did this, or it's okay that this business, that leader is doing that, because, and the narrative is usually very quite false. Why? Because we are uncomfortable with the awkwardness of the hypocrisy, or the disconnect, or the misalignment. We're uncomfortable with the fact that, oh, you know what, I'm still here with this company, or still here following this person, I'm still here doing this. And for me, like when I look at that ad, I didn't want to be having to explain to people cognitive dissonance. Thank you, Kira, for correcting me on that. I appreciate that. You want to make sure that you are not. It's difficult. It's difficult to actually deal with that. You want to make sure you're not, trying to struggle with that, because most of us, disassociate ourselves from those things because it's too uncomfortable. Whether and say another big one that another big one that I work with people when I help people with career transitions. Most 80% of people are dispassionate, or not happy with their jobs, right? But they don't do anything about it because they create a narrative where they say, "Oh, it's okay, I'm just grateful to have this job. I'm grateful. I mean, I know my boss is kind of a jerk, and like it's very stressful. I work long hours, and I miss my kids, but it pays the bills, and I'm grateful for the opportunity. But it doesn't mean you can't try to improve it, right?" Thank you, Laura. Laura says, I respect that you stuck to your values. Very challenging when someone feels stuck. Yeah, and like I said, I'm glad I had the chance to do that. Other people don't, but it's important to create allies, to talk to people, to suss it out and talk to people about that. Now, Nirvana says, ethics, does anyone care these days? Well, that's a great question. I think that, to be honest, I think it's gotten a lot worse. I think that people now are more willing to forego their ethics. They're willing to just forget what they were. They're willing to ignore hypocrisy or misalignment. They're willing to, just create a narrative that's a false narrative that that keeps them where they are, what they're doing. Again, and this is in everything. This happens in relationships. It happens in politics. It happens in business, and we do it all the time. Now, does anyone care? Sure, many people care. There's lots of people that care. It's like to say that no one cares. No. Like, I think the majority of people care, and then of that majority, a smaller group will do something about it. The other ones might say something but not do anything about it. And there's other people that don't say anything. And there's other people that haven't thought about it. And so there's a whole gamut of people that look at different things in terms of their ethics. Because it's also a very uncomfortable situation. Like make it really personal. Your boss and best friend of 10 years is doing something ethical. Do you tell anyone? You probably wouldn't, because there's loyalty and things like that. And you're kind of complicit, but then what do you do? It's very hard to do that. I mean, what if it was my family? What if my father was doing something? Would I say something? I don't know. Like, I wouldn't want to get my dad in trouble. I mean, it depends what it is, but like, there's small things we kind of let go because of whatever it might be. So I think that's an important thing to keep in mind. One of the things I think has been really difficult from an ethics standpoint is that lately there's been a culture of people are feeling more emboldened to be more bullying, more divisive, more actually to be more demeaning and diminishing, to take offense easily, to all these different things, as opposed to really trying to listen to each other, to understand one another, to create connection, and all that kind of stuff. And that's causing a lot of problems in society, both business and personal and life. So I think that definitely there's a shift happening, which is unfortunate. Some people are more self-serving about that, but ultimately, I think most people are good and ethical and want the best for everybody. And the problem is they create the narrative of why don't they speak up? They create a narrative where they don't speak up, right? Well, this boss, well, he did do this nice thing, okay? Or my boyfriend or my husband, well, he helps support with the kids, or well, this person is doing this thing for the country, but you're forgetting all the other bad things, right? And we do this all the time. So it's important for us to be mindful of that. I was focused this more on work. I mean, I'm thinking more about a work thing, but I think most people do care. And look like Marcel's back. Thanks so much. Kira, such a big conversation. So happy you started sharing. Thank you. How about saying something to them? Yeah, well, I mean, again, if you're in a toxic situation, you can say something to them. Again, there are risks. You have to look at the overall circumstances of your life and your career. Can you handle being let go? Can you handle even greater conflict at work? How's it going? Do you have allies? Right? How is HR looking at this? What are the values of the company? Is there precedent? These are all things you have to look at to make sure that you can say something. I always encourage people to say stuff, and the same thing happened to some of my friends. Both in personal relationships and in their career, and they just won't say anything. They're too scared or too nervous, or they're just willing to let it go. And it happens all the time. It's very frustrating. I feel my heart goes to these people, and they're suffering. They truly are suffering, and yet they cannot speak up. And I'm only one voice. I can only say, you know what, you need to speak up. But a lot of people just can't do it, so it's very difficult. Someone just got fired for turning the manager over me for bullying me. Yeah, see, that's awful. Like, this happens, and the same thing happened actually to another person really close to me, where they called something out, and then next thing you know, they're getting let go, and they tried to fight it, and it didn't work. They got bullied into submission. It's terrible. So it happens all the time. Sometimes, sometimes you want to let it go, but if they do let you go, then it's good that you didn't align there. So it's better to go find someplace that you align with. And some great topics here. Thanks, Gazia, for that. There's individual issues, Grace. You're true, and then there's also the work culture. So there's things we have to think about that. And HR sometimes doesn't help. Sometimes HR does help. Often they don't help. Sometimes again, there's a culture of how much power does HR have to actually do anything. So it's important for us to be mindful of that. So I think we've covered the gamut of dealing with aligning with your values. It's important for you. Number one, make sure you know what your values are. Okay, that's really clear. Number two, make sure you know what the values of the organization or company or work is, because that's going to be something that's going to help you. And then number three, create a support system of people that are aligned with you and aligned with your values, because then when the push comes to shove and that day happens, you'll have people to talk to about this, and you can leverage the system. And the fourth thing I want to say is that every single one of you should focus on your own fulfillment. Okay, focus. The number one, the company, a company's not going to look after you. You have to look after yourself. They certainly will help you, but the number one person to look after is yourself. Okay, and make sure you take care of your well-being and your career growth and your fulfillment and your joy and your happiness and everything like that. Because if it's not going well, you need to deal with it, and you need to step up and fight for who you are and what you believe in, because that's so important. All right. So, anyways, I hope you enjoyed this. Again, I'm here every day at 8:30 a.m. for the Power Connection broadcast and for LinkedIn Live. Join me every Monday to Friday. If you wanna tag people, join the conversation. Let me know. I cover topics around leadership, career development, personal branding, thought leadership, public speaking, things like that. And if you know someone that wants to be interviewed, I do weekly interviews. And now actually I'm excited because I've already booked 3 interviews in a row. So I've got next week, the week after, and the week after all booked for interviews with influencers and leaders in Toronto. But I'm hopefully going to get remote access as well and interview people elsewhere. So if you know people in Toronto that are influencers or leaders in their field, tag them below, and I'd love to connect with them to see if they want to be part of the interview process and be part of this broadcast for my Wisdom Wednesdays broadcast. Yeah, I mean, they don't. I mean, there are company cultures that really do care about people. They do, but I always say at the end of the day, people as a value for a company can only go to number 2, right? The best companies in the world that people love, people is number 2. Profitability is number 1. And so if profitability conflicts with the people, that person will be let go, or that person will have to deal with a difficult situation. So it's important to be mindful of that and how that works. Okay, so that's it for today. Shorter one today. That's okay. Well, do I do remote interviews? Well, right now the app that I'm using doesn't allow for it. But if it does have that, then I probably will start doing that. But for now, I'm sticking to people in Toronto, I also I'll interview people for a non-live video, but that's more of a Zoom call, and then we just upload the video to LinkedIn. All right, so thanks so much for joining me. Appreciate it. Appreciate your comments. Appreciate likes. Appreciate your shares. And appreciate all the engagement you guys are giving me. Have a wonderful day, and I'll see you guys tomorrow. Take care.